It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. What is a release plan and why does it matter? That is the overarching question for the Daily Stand Up today. What I can tell you is I get loads of questions regarding release planning. It's not actually part of the Scrum framework. It's not listed in the Scrum guide. It's not drawn out in many places. People often ask me, how is release planning an effective tool and how can it impact what I'm doing? And I went and dug up and did some research, and I found an old article by a fellow CST, Roman Pickler, and it talks about release planning advice. And I thought that this would be a good starting point for our conversation. He says release planning is an important task for product people working with agile teams. It ensures that the product is moving in the right direction and connects strategy and tactics. Despite its importance, release planning is not always effectively practiced. So, what is release planning? I guess the big question. Well, release planning allows us to put together a formulated way to discover and to discuss what could be part of a potential package. Now, when I say package, I think of things like, if I were talking about Apple products, I might say the Mac OS X Catalina is a release, or Windows 10 is a release for Microsoft, right? Or I could say the iOS 13 is a major release and 13.3 is a minor release, for example, right? So we can look at releases as either a time bound version or encapsulation of a product or service, or we can look at it as a smaller, minor, micro version of an improvement to a currently existing product or service. So there's a couple of different ways to look at releases. In my world, releases are either package driven or date driven, meaning that all of these items are expected to be in the 9.4 release. Or you could say, we are going to do our next release of our product on August 31st. Either way, it's still a release. I think the purpose of release, first and foremost, is to understand what type of release it is and to focus on a desired outcome of the release and what you're hoping to achieve, as opposed to sticking to a more data mined, metrics driven release. I think that if you take the time to establish clear, specific, and measurable goals, it's going to make it easier for you to capture what you hope to entail in a release on a roadmap and translate that from the roadmap into features that can be broken down accordingly so that you can have well-defined stories. This is going to help you determine what work needs to be done. So it's going to involve, during release planning, you're going to have the team or teams providing rough high level estimates. Now, notice I said team or teams. Many organizations who work on smaller initiatives do this one team at a time, and that's perfectly fine, and it saves a lot of time, and you're good to go. But in some organizations that are larger, or where you're working on larger products, it's a better practice to do this with all the teams participating at the same time. This is often called big room planning or PI planning. Some people even go through and do the whole planning poker initiative where they talk about each and every item that could potentially be part of the release. Now, while I don't holistically disagree with planning poker, I do disagree with the amount of time that it takes to go through hundreds of items if you're a large organization and trying to involve too many people in a room for your planning session. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we need to find a way to still determine the work that can be done, size it accordingly, so that we as product owners can understand date and budget constraints, so that we can reply to those and respond and guide people, and so that we have a method of monitoring progress from one sprint to the next and being able to show some type of upward dashboard or report that's transparent and tells people exactly what they can expect. You're going to get all of these, some of these, and none of these. The whole idea is to enable organizations to make informed decisions, whether it's regarding investment, setting expectations, aligning stakeholders. There's lots of things that you can do, but it is in your best interest to consider how you are handling release planning and what it means to you. Another good tip that Roman points out is to leverage the product roadmap to illustrate multiple releases. And I think this is a great idea. One of the things that I heavily promote is doing a division wide roadmap or even a company wide roadmap if your company's small enough, where you're showing things like these are all the items, for example, that our commerce division is going to be working on in Q2. And it might be 5 or 7 different products that you're going to be working on. And each one shows what release related topics you're going to be covering so that you can frame things up and display it for people. Another good piece of advice is to work with a goal oriented roadmap. If you can do a goal oriented product roadmap that shows the outcomes for every release for the next 12 months or for the one major release in the next 12 months, it's going to allow you to encapsulate and capture the right information. So, some of your sample goals could include acquiring new users, increasing conversion, reducing cost, removing technical debt. There's lots of things you can do, but you need to make sure when you frame it up that you're capturing a date, the dates or time frames when your goal should be met, the name of any new major release or product version, the goal that you're trying to achieve, the benefit that the product should create for a user or business, the features that you hope to include at a high level. They don't need to be incredibly detailed at this point, and some form of definition of done, meaning metrics to determine if the goal has been met. How are you going to measure success? You need to have some plan in place. The goal of having a true product roadmap is to tell a compelling story about what you're planning to build, whether it's a product or a service. It should describe the journey that the customer takes in order to receive value, and it should have some level of prioritization as far as these are the initiatives we need to work on first, second, third, and fourth. Because the truth is, if we try to rank things and say, let's work on the highest priority items, what's going to happen is we'll quickly discover that everything is a high priority, when in actuality, everything is important, but everything really isn't urgent, and we need to be able to differentiate between those two. So you need to make sure that you actively and willingly and all in participate when it comes to prioritizing and trying to limit the amount of scope that you're working on at any one given time. Limiting WIP is another one of the key things to help make backlogs and to help make roadmaps flow better. So that way it allows us to really hyper focus on a release and get the things out that are going to yield the biggest impact. And I think this ties back to employing the right estimation technique, right? If you are trying to estimate everything using time, you're going to be terribly off with your estimates because the truth is, different people have different tools, different skill sets, different mindsets, different levels of experience, and it's going to take them different amounts of time to do things. If you come in and you measure everything using size, whether it's a t shirt size, a dog size, a dinosaur size, animal size, anything you want, what's going to happen is those estimates are going to be more clear. They're going to be based on size, and regardless of who works on it, we can figure out how many units of work the team can complete in any given sprint, and that's going to be a more accurate portrayal of how the work should be consumed. So there's a lot of good information there. I think the last key to this is to make sure that you're showing outwardly the results of your release. And that's more than just a demo. I want you to make sure that if you're dealing with executives or if you're dealing with leadership, that you use some type of release burn down chart to show burning down of points, where you show the remaining effort in the backlog left and either the number of sprints remaining, and you can burn down points, or the number of weeks remaining with points. There's a lot of ways to do this, but you want to make sure you have an actual line that you're burning against and that you have a countdown of the things that are being done. The critical piece here is that you don't use this to micromanage, but that you take advantage of this so that you can really position yourself to help the organization see that work is being completed, that it's timely, and that it's yielding the result that they are looking for. That you're not being overly optimistic or overly pessimistic, that you're signing up for the work you can do and that you're completing that work. And I think that the key to all of this is to make sure if you do release planning sessions that you make those incredibly collaborative. I involve product managers, product owners, development teams, even sometimes people who are from marketing or service or support. We always have a scrum master or a coach that'll help facilitate. And I believe in doing really large scale release planning. I call it rapid release planning, and there's a lot of posts, blog posts out there. There's videos, there's documentation, and there's a ton of podcast episodes. So I'm not going to dive into that here. But I feel like if you do rapid release planning, it's going to allow you to have a foolproof technique to help you really get your head around the importance of laying out a roadmap, planning for your release, and doing it in such a way that you're being transparent and exposing the empirical process that you're inspecting and adapting along the way, but you're not letting people interject work that doesn't belong. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this little bit longer episode. As always, if you have a topic you want us to cover, reach out to us at learnmore@agiledad.com, where we'd love to take care of you and your topic. And as always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.